am I successful when I do something, or am I successful when I feel something? Am I successful when I accomplish something, or am I successful in the process? So thanks for joining tonight, and we're counting on some personal involvement on this topic, because it is sort of a big topic, just the whole idea of what is success. It has cultural components to it. It has personal components to it. It has definitely some ambiguity to it. It's like, am I successful when I do something, or am I successful when I feel something? Am I successful when I accomplish something, or am I successful in the process? So there's a huge spectrum of what success is or means. And again, it's super personal, very personal. So it's personal, it's societal or cultural, and it's the spectrum is huge. So both Alex and I would be grateful if you would participate. And Joanna and Julie, if you wanted to be on screen or not, please unmute all of you and be free to give your ideas. So the first question that we would like to pose this evening is, what does success look like for you? What have you used as an idea of what success is in your life?
And please do feel free to interject whenever.
Yeah.
If you do have something on your mind but don't feel like sharing with the group, you can chat it directly to me, and then I'll bring it up anonymously. If you don't want it discussed, then just stay silent. Totally fine. But as Kirk mentioned, it's a small, intimate group tonight. So if you're comfortable engaging, wonderful. That'll help the talk tonight. So there's a few different layers of how you can engage.
So yes, feel free to type it in, and if you feel comfortable speaking, go ahead, Jeanette.
Okay, so for me, when I think about it, I think about how success is tied to happiness.
Happiness.
How my happiness level has gone up and down all over my life. I mean, I've lived many decades, and it's been dependent a lot on my family situation, because most of my job in life has been to nurture my family. So, it was quite dependent on the phase of the children we're in and the happiness of everyone else in my family. Now, since I don't have kids in the house, I can concentrate on myself more. And when I think about success, my personal success, I probably think of in smaller increments. Like, I try to break it down into 3-year increments, and I try to accomplish something that is important to me in those 3 years. And when I get to the end of that, I definitely feel a sense of success.
That's great. So it includes sort of setting a vision or a goal for yourself, and then an incremental approach to getting there over a period of time.
Yeah, definitely.
But what you first said was that ultimately it's about gaining happiness. Did I get that right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So your particular points of reference for success are about bringing you more happiness.
Definitely. Yeah.
Thanks, Jeanette. Anybody else have any willingness to share what success means to you, or what it has meant to you in your life? Because sometimes what we think success when we're younger and we're entering our career, and we have particular ideas of what success is then, might be different when we're in midlife or when we've retired. Like even with Jeanette's example, after she's accomplished her main career of raising a household.
Well, I can give you perspective that I've experienced over my career for 45 years, I guess. I've been working as a chartered accountant, consulting, doing accounting and tax, and selling businesses and so on with small businesses and their owners. And success is defined in the business world in very, very differently than it is, than, for example, what Jeanette just described. Success is about winning. It's about how much money you make. It's about paying less tax, getting bigger, growing, doing things like that. And I've never bought into that, even though I've been working with those people. It's always, once I get to know people, I often find that they may consider themselves successful, but they can't remember their kids' names, or, that sort of thing. So they have a very narrow definition of what constitutes success for them. And I think they're missing a lot in life by taking that perspective. It doesn't allow for, it's so focused on one thing that it's almost like that's all life is about for them. And I actually feel sorry for people that way, that feel that way.
That's like success, but at the sake of.
Yeah.
So perhaps what I'm hearing from you, Jeff, is that maybe there needs to be success that has balance. We can be successful in our career, in our parenting, in out in the world, but if it's at the sake of our health or the sake of our relationships, is that true success? So
Right.
how do we find that balance? I'm going to quote something from hospice nurses who have worked with with dying people, and hands down, the number one comment that these nurses collected over decades was that the majority of the people wished they had had the courage to live a life that was true to themselves rather than what was expected of them by others.
Mm.
So at the end of their life, their greatest regret is they lived a life for the expectations of others rather than being true to their own needs or their own values or their own visions. And that's a sad way to end your life.
I think that's very true, but I think it's also very difficult it's easy to say that, and it's easy to look in from the outside, but when you're living your life, you're striving so hard to make enough money for your family to be comfortable, to reach the next level of your accounting degree, or whatever. I mean, you have to do these things, and it's not necessarily imposed by society. It's human nature to be able to generate enough income to take care of your family, to make the right judgments, not to be flippant about things. And I think it's just really tough. It's not this life of ours is not easy to navigate.
No, and just to counter that point, Jeanette, it's a cultural thing. Like if you went to a tribal society in the Amazon right now, success would have a whole different list of measures than we have in our competitive post-technological industrial capitalist society, where striving for position, status, power, monetary benefits all mean security. For them, the group comes first. So whatever works the best for the group for security and survival is what success means. In our culture and society, it's primarily resting on the shoulders of the individual. Yes, we do some of these things for family, but it's still based on individual over the whole. In other cultures, like say in Japan, where the spirituality of the culture has been woven in for hundreds of years, mastery, so doing our accounting or flower arrangements or whatever it is that we put our focus on for self-growth and success, comes when you are no longer the person doing it. You are an empty vessel that the spiritual aspect of the unity of all of life moves through to do it. So all of your training your whole life is to become an empty vessel. Completely different cultural orientation to what we have, especially when you use the word striving. Our culture is based on performance and striving.
But
Now,
I think
Go
Kirk,
ahead,
that
Kirby.
no, what you're alluding to there also talks about the stages of one's life, right? And becoming an empty vessel. Because I've done this, having retired over the last 15 months, and one of the things I've been doing is spending some time reading some about this and how do you want to, what becomes important. And there's a book I read a few years ago that I commend to others reading if they haven't read it. And it's a book called How Will You Measure Your Life? And it's by Clay Christensen, who is quite a good author in terms of, from a business perspective. Innovator's Dilemma was another one of his books. And he focused on relationships was one of the key ways, and spiritual relationships, family relationships, friend relationships. And then more recently, I've been reading a book called Life in Full, and that talks about, and some of the other points that have been made here, I think integrate with this, because it talks about your life in stages. And it says the first stage of your life is all about some things we talked about. Achievement is kind of the word they use. And, it's focused on doing what you need to do to ensure that your family is going to be comfortable, that you are getting the kind of recognition that has become important in our society, as you talked about, Kirk, and you're building a financial situation that's going to help you achieve what you want to for the rest of your life and for your part of your legacy and for your family. But then the second part of that is achievement. Sorry, first part achievement, second part relationships. So, it moves from once you've achieved what you think you need to achieve in your life, then where are you going to spend your time and how are you going to define success at that stage? And it talked about this, the same point, relationships, family, friends, spiritual relationships, community relationships, and the importance of those things. So I think it's something that does evolve and change over the course of one's life. And the point that was made too, and putting in terms of and I didn't really get this, but I thought more about it and talked to some people about it, and they talked about happiness. And the point was made, I think, by Jeanette about happiness and achieving that, and happiness, and that kind of they matched with the achievement phase, and the relationship phase was joy versus happiness. And then the definition of joy, and I'm not a grandfather, and so I hadn't appreciated this, but speaking to some of my friends who are grandfathers, that's what they said. That was the kind of definition of, excuse me, the definition of joy for them and success for them was having grandchildren and spending time with their grandchildren. That was so different from anything they otherwise achieved in their life, and it was kind of on a different chart as to how they evaluated the kind of success they had.
Yeah, thank you, Kirby. I agree. I think there's stages that we go through, and Jeanette alluded to that as well. And I'm not trying to say that our society is wrong, or that working on achievement or even the movement through paychecks and positions and status and all of that is just the trajectory we take in our endeavors to secure life for our loved ones ultimately. And so I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. Again, we want to come back into balance, like Jeff mentioned, where it shouldn't be done at the sake of, because we all know people who focus so hard on one particular aspect of their life, and then they missed out on other aspects and end up feeling a sense of loss, or even worse, they could get sick.
No, I agree. And I wasn't at all being critical of your analysis.
I know.
Because that's what that Christensen's book was all about, was all these people that made the wrong trade-offs in the first part of their lives and had nothing left for that second part of their lives. They had no relationships left because it had all been about achievement, and they sacrificed everything.
And I think another part of that relational side you talked about is when we get to a certain stage in our life where we are able to give back, because at first we're taking in so that we can get somewhere to make sure we have safety and security for our loved ones. But at a certain level, we either give back as grandparents, or we give back as mentors, or we give back as coaches, or we give back in a way where all the gifts, all the boon that we've created in our trajectory, our stages of life, isn't successful if we can't give it back.
So I just wanted to add, Kirk, to that list of books is David Brooks' Second Mountain. Yeah. I think I've probably given away 30 copies of that now. Like, I'm 55 and like all my friends are like empty nesters, and they're all sort of like now what? But when you find your now what and it's externally focused, it's really, really fun, and it gives you like a second wind, and it's all that giving back stuff. And you start to see all of your experiences to date in a totally different context, because you understand that you needed them all to be able to go to your second mountain and climb it.
And that's his word, isn't it? His word is joy, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge David Brooks fan, but and I'm sorry I keep on going in and out. You know, I have like 12 pairs of glasses and I don't have the right ones with me, so I find Zoom
That's okay, don't worry.
hard.
Thanks for sharing that, Karen.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Julie or Sinead or Anne or Joanna? Anyone have? Go ahead, Julie.
I was going to say, I think for me, it's easy to start and say, well, what matters to me is happiness and joy and relationships. And I think where the challenge comes, excuse me, is because we are an individualistic society. I've got kids to support and myself to support, and I want my kids to be able to have music lessons and go to college and do all these things that cost a fair bit of money, eat well, whatnot. And so where I struggle, and what Jeanette said also resonated with me, and I don't know if this is the same thread, but it's, you know, it's not an either or, right? If I could just focus on happiness and joy, and I think you touched on this too with the balance, that would be great. I would love to just do that. But what I find hard is once I have to make money and I have to be in this other world, that other world really resists boundaries. They want all of your time, all of your energy, all of your heart. They want you 24/7. And, you know, if I could say, hey, I'd love to work this many hours a week and I'd have these boundaries, I'd take vacations 6 weeks a year, like that would be lovely, but I'd have no job. And I think there was, might have been in the New York Times, there was a great article that basically said there's not a direct proportionality between your hours and your earning, that the really high earners are absolutely all 24/7, 365.
Yeah.
And if you want any kind of part-time or even 9 to 5, you earn such a small fraction of what you can make if you sell your soul to the devil, as the saying is. So I feel like it's tough.
I think you're saying something that's very true that we can all relate to, Julian. I want to put out another cultural thing that we can look at for helping us find balance, and that's the concept of enough. Because in our culture, we live under quite a bit of fear of security or insecurity. We live out of quite a bit of fear about scarcity. And so those drivers pull us away from questioning once in a while that balance of, is this enough? Am I enough? Am I doing enough? Am I contributing enough? This idea of what's enough rather than a constant elevated growth. And that's our culture too, in our economic society, is it's growth at all costs, where every quarter we have to have more profits, which drives everybody to keep producing more and more and more. There's never a point where enough is enough. That we don't balance it with, oh, if we keep pushing all of our staff, we're gonna lose staff. And just to let you know, the greatest, most recent research is showing that job loss is at its all-time highest right now. People are quitting jobs more frequently right now than any other time in our financial history. And that's primarily because of dissatisfaction, of being out of balance, of having to strive to work so hard to master the fears of security and scarcity. And all of us who have ever traveled in in developing nations in the world, we can go to places around the globe where people are living on way less enoughness than us. And do you see a lot of anxiety and depression? Do you see a lot of negative mental and emotional well-being? No. So again, it comes back to balance. I think we have to ask ourselves, how much is enough that I have to work? And does it put me out of balance with my health, with my relationships, with my passions, my personal growth? And at what cost do I have to provide those music lessons to my children? And that's where we have the right. And if you look at the most highly successful people, they all have boundaries. None of them are boundaryless. Most of them are fearless. They're willing to swim upstream because they believe in certain things that motivate them to invent or create or produce. And most of them, they have boundaries. They're willing to check in and go, what are my needs, not my wants? And do I have the right to protect those needs? Is it in the best interest of all, including me, to have to give myself away?
But that's a difficult.
My grandmother always used to say, what you don't have to laugh over, you don't have to cry over. And that's taken on more and more meaning as I've aged. And I keep on saying to all the people in my life, I want less, because I have to look after it all.
Right.
Clean and dry and insured and up to date and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't want to do it.
Yeah. So freedom could be a sense of success. Joy is definitely a sense of success. Tranquility is the #1 sense of success in Japan. Tranquility.
You know, there's times just picking up on the stages thing that Kirby mentioned. There are, well, just an anecdote, I guess. When my in-laws were elderly, they're deceased now for many years. My wife and I used to go and visit them. They lived in Wisconsin, and so we would visit from Toronto. It's a day's drive. A week or two in the summer and do all kinds of chores around the house, and then for a week, typically between Christmas and New Year's. And it's cold in Wisconsin in the winter. There's not much to do, so I would read their Christmas cards in the mail and stuff like that. And the letters they were getting from their friends who were their age as well. There was no discussion about material things at all. It was all about relationships. You know, my spouse has been sick this year. My son got cancer. Somebody's, you know, I've got 3 new great grandchildren. Relationships were the only thing that was important. And I remember my in-laws couldn't give away the material things fast enough. It became clutter. Yet if you think back to an earlier stage in their life, there was no doubt some striving going on to buy those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's
So do you think part of it is a mindset shift? Because again, looking at the most successful people, one of the things they have is a growth mindset or a sense of learning mindset rather than a more fear-based mindset. And maybe as we get older and we get closer to that last gateway of our life, which is death, which in our culture we're pretty afraid of, they are starting to lighten their load and realize what's really tangibly the most rich for them is the joy they get from connections with other human beings. And so, like Kirby mentioned, it is stages that we go through, but I want to just touch in on what we can do in a practical way around creating success for ourselves our whole life. Because even at your age, Jeff, there's still things that we want to have in our lives, experiences. And so one of the things that we've been doing with our base camp weekend retreats is having everybody do a vision board. And this is a fun little project you can do, where you can get a bunch of magazines and cut out and make a collage on a vision board on a piece of cardboard, or you can use an app or platform on the internet called Canva, as in art canvas, CANVA. And you would maybe meditate for 5 minutes or go for a walk and just state shift your mind for 5 minutes and come in and allow your right hemisphere of your brain, rather than the left analytical side that we exercise so much, to intuit images that tell us what we want for ourselves in our life. And we start building them into a template of, what do I want with my relationships? What do I want with my creative self? What do I want with travel? Where do I want to see myself in 2 years in my marriage? What kind of home do I want to have now that I'm an empty nester? You can put everything in there, your spiritual life, your physical health life, your nutrition, everything. And you start to build intuitively the vision that you want for yourself. And then from that vision, we can become more practical and start to set goals and timelines and say, in this next 2 years, for me to get here with travel, or here with my spiritual path, or here with my creativity, I'm going to take these steps towards it over the next 6 or 12 months. And I'm going to create space for that to happen by pulling these things out of my life for the space for it to happen. And so we can work with a visioning and then setting goals and then getting specific with the goals down to actions that we turn into lifestyle habits, so that we can generate more joy, more relation, more nature, more whatever it is you want in your life by being conscious about it. It's so easy for us to go day by day and allow habits as a mammal to just keep us kind of in a basic, I won't say the word rut, but in a pattern where we may not be attending towards the vision that we really have for ourselves, and where we really exercise the success measures that we want, whether they're joy, relation, creativity, security, if that's something that we're looking towards, learning, growth, personal development, any of it. That does take some marching to our own drum. It does take some fierceness to stand up for our visions and our goals and our actions that we're weaving into a lifestyle that sometimes push up against others in our life that may not want change, that may not like the direction that we want to go in. But we deserve to go for what is true for us. All of us deserve that. And we deserve to be able to say, these are my needs, these are my requests, these are my boundaries, this is what I need to do. And when I do this, I'm going to be more. I will be a better mother, I will be a better grandparent, I'll be a better worker, I'll be whatever it is that we're doing. We always are better to everybody around us when we enrich ourselves, when we pursue the visions we have that align with our values and our core being. And when we do, and we're in that march with our own drum, yes, we're going to bump into obstacles. Sometimes we're going to fail. But if we have a mindset that life is about learning, we just recalibrate and still continue on our path towards the vision we set for ourselves. And when you look again at the qualities of the most successful people in the world, they don't give up. They're relentless. It doesn't mean that they push through all their obstacles. They hit an obstacle and they become mindful and they ask questions. They become curious rather than fearful. You can't be both. You can be anxious or you can be curious. And then they recalibrate and keep going towards the vision they have for themselves. And they celebrate every little success in a mindset again that's about gratitude. Because all of us on the screen today here have more things that we could count as blessings and successes in our life than could fill our hands. But rarely do we stop and check those and go, oh my God, yes, have had this wonderful success in my life around this parenting, or around my health, or around my career, or around my creativity, or around my relationships. So we need to celebrate those, because when we're in a mindset of gratitude, again, the mind does not go to anxiety. It does not go to the fear of security and scarcity. It's recognizing all the blessings and the benefits that we've created and co-created in our lives. So that's a list of practical things that we can do at any time in our life, at any chapter change in our life, retirement or empty nesting or change of career. It's worth taking the time to vision, align our values, and be true to ourselves. And then invoke the fierceness with the will to learn and experiment and grow towards the qualities that we want in our life. Any feedback? Any questions?
Kirk, I'll leave you with one question here. If you reach a level of tranquility, does this mean you are not passionate?
To get to a place of tranquility requires passion, because passion is like the fuel for motivation, to become disciplined, to create actions into habits that create the space for things like tranquility or joy. It's like investment. You can't invest in anything without passion. So the end result could be joy or tranquility or connection, but the journey we take to get there requires the passion, the fierceness, the joie de vivre, to live life, to go for those qualities in our life. They don't just fall into our hands.
I think a similar way to question this, and this will elicit a different answer, is thinking about it in regards to ego. And if one goal in life, one success, is to become one and dissolve the ego, and there's a common question that arrives of, well, if you do dissolve your ego, then are you anything? Are you actually going to write a book? Are you going to take your kids out to the game? Because that all is ego driven.
Well,
so yeah, maybe it's a little bit deep. And
yeah, no, I think the first misconception is that the goal is to dissolve the ego. I think it's more that instead of only having ego run our lives, we start to develop the other quality of our mind, another state of being where we can be comfortable with insecurity. We can be comfortable with change, because that's how life is. That's the way nature works. We can be comfortable with a state of beingness where we just witness and allow things to happen without coming from a egoic state, which is a state we had to have as children and we've educated in everything else, that's always looking for security and for control, to make sure that we feel safe and secure in the world. But the world doesn't work like that. And that's why there's so much anxiety and so much struggle, is the world is constantly, impermanently changing. So the more we have an ego to make decisions in our life, to engage in all kinds of things, but the more we exercise that other part of our mind, which is willing to just be in the unknown state, where there's possibilities that arise, where flow can happen and synchronicities, we get more balance. So ultimately, I don't believe it's about taking something out like with Dumbledore's wand, something that's called the ego, and then we become egoless. And even the Dalai Lama, he's not egoless. There's nobody that's egoless. It's more about the balance between all ego or having this state of being where we can allow life to be without being crushed by it. Does that make sense, Alex?
Mhm.
That makes sense. But Kirk, can we come back to just the connection between fierceness and tranquility?
Yes,
When you say fierceness, do you mean commitment and
Yes.
focus and
determination.
drive? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's an energy, and you could say it's an energy that's attached to primal energy that we all tap into. Fierceness doesn't mean angry, rageful, vengeful. Fierceness means drawing into the energy of life that gives us that little extra to stick to something, to be a little bit more relentless, rather than it's so easy in our world to say, it's difficult, I don't like it, I'm not doing it anymore. 50% of all people who buy a gym pass only go once.
Or twice. Yeah.
They
In my
never
case,
use even 1 month, that's for sure, because it's uncomfortable. So fierceness is a part that we need to tap into sometimes to get through those little walls of discomfort on the journey that we're on towards tranquility, joy, and those qualities that we want to have in our life.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. So nice to see you all. Thank you all for participating. It was lovely to make it conversational. I really appreciate that a lot. And wish you all great success in finding balance in your life. That's really, from our perspective, what it's about. Find balance in what you have to do and what you need. And get to know, take the pauses in your life to have some reflection time, some contemplation time, to find out what those needs are that are really true to you, that align with your values, and then work on your vision and your action plan, your goals, your specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-centric actions. And we can get those things that we want in our life. We deserve it.
Thank you, Kirk. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Take good care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.